need to be. Coming from the heart, coming from the heart.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of From the Heart, where we talk with women who are inspirational, who have been through thick and thin and have risen from the ashes. And today, I get the chills. Oh my gosh, all over, because today we have one of those amazing women. You should recognize Krystal because she has been with us before. It's Krystal Wilson with Grateful Being Health and Wellness. Welcome back, my friend.
Hi, I was like almost crying already.
I know. Well, whatever energy you've got going on, and I know it's a lot of goodness, you sent it over here because I went head to toe chills.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Crazy stuff. So last time you were here with us, you were living in Colorado, you were homeschooling your kiddo, you were a married lady. Things have changed. And this has only been like what, a couple months, 6 months, something like that?
I don't know when I was last on, but it's been a lot of change the last 8 months.
A lot of change in the last few months. So catch me up, girl. What happened after that?
Yeah, so November, the universe decided I needed to be on a whole different journey. And I think it was a long time coming for a lot of it. And then some of it just like forced me to be creative and realize I wasn't aligning myself with everything that was for me, I think. So, yeah, my business completely crumbled.
Were you like, let me get to the feeling. Were you feeling like a bit of a fish out of water? Were you like, I'm not in the wrong physical space, or I'm not in the right physical space? Like what was it? Or did you have a moment of clarity at that point in time? Did you know what it was, or were you just kind of in that seek to understand why I'm feeling off kind of situation?
Yeah, I felt like I had grown in certain aspects of my life to a potential, and I was beginning to really put energy into spiritual growth. I had a really amazing community and beautiful people in Colorado. I mean, everything was really good, but I believe that I was holding on to things that weren't for me, for reasons that I just wasn't ready to let go yet. And so I knew, I felt like there were some anchors a little bit. And I started to get a little creative on the business side, kind of knowing that changes were coming. And ultimately, I also knew that my relationship, we had put a lot into it, but we just we're going on different paths. And so even though there was all this potential and this growth and this amazing beauty happening, there was a lot of like hitting walls. So, yeah.
And do you feel like you started to change because you were getting more involved with yourself? Because when we dive into more spirituality, correct me if I'm wrong, but we kind of discover ourselves a bit deeper in a much different way, right? And so did you find that it was a bit of that? Like, hey, I know who I am more now. Because let's face it, it's a journey figuring that out, right?
Yeah, I had been on a 4-year journey already of healing. I think, I shared that on the last time I was on. That was a huge reason why me and my family moved to Colorado, was to focus on us and to focus on continuing to grow together. Unfortunately, that's not how it happened. I continued to grow. And I knew that I knew what I wanted, and I knew I was getting very, very clear on that. And what was happening was not allowing me to get there. And so, yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah. I mean, kind of the more that we learn about ourselves, the more we discover the things in our lives that aren't working, that we may have just been kind of going through the motions or just have been on repeat,
Yeah. And I really, back in October, so right before November, I committed 100% to living life sober. as well. So that's been a huge part of this self-growth and self-awareness and self-clarity of the life that I want. And I think that just snowballed.
And were you finding that your partner was moving in that direction? And is that was that part of it?
That was a huge part. Unfortunately, my partner and our ex did not have the same priorities and values. We did when we met, but that changed. So that was a constant barrier.
And so you're just kind of feeling a little uncomfortable in your own skin, so to speak, if I'm saying that correctly, there in that relationship.
I think
And
it
you
was
knew
not
something needed to change.
uncomfortable. Yeah, I don't think it was uncomfortable in my own skin. I think it was um I've grieved this already. I was in love with an idea of what I thought we could be and what our family would be, and then I started grieving it because I ultimately knew that wasn't going to be the case. And that's when I just said, well, I'm going to pour 100% into myself and my daughter, and the rest of it will get figured out as it's supposed to. We did a year of therapy as well. And so ultimately, when it was time that the decision was made, I knew we knew that it was going to happen. So, in all of last year, it was just, I felt amazing and I felt great and I was pouring into me, and I kind of just knew that the rest would unfold as it needed to. I was trusting the process, honestly.
And that's, I have been through a pretty significant relationship that unfortunately also ended. Fortunately in a lot of ways, but unfortunately in some too, because like you had said, I had a certain vision for what that relationship was going to be, and it never sort of arrived there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a really tough moment, where when and I'd love for you to sort of explain how it was for you, but for me, when I knew, hey, it was done and there's just no going back and there is no fixing this and I just don't really want to be here. It was so hard to be confident in that decision, because what if I change my mind?
Yeah, I think my hardest part was the Band-Aid, ripping the Band-Aid off and finally calling it. I 100% knew that I wasn't going to change my mind. Um, it was just getting the words out and knowing that this decision of choosing my happiness was going to be so hard for my daughter.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when we made the decision, I wasn't the one that ripped the Band-Aid off. He was. And that's his detail to share on his own, but it kind of happened because of other people's influence, but it pushed us to sit down and admit, like, we're not happy. Neither of us are. And we tried therapy and we tried, but really, are we even willing to do what the other person needs? And I don't think that we were capable of it. Not even willing. I don't think we were capable. And so, yeah, we decided to separate in November, but we didn't even tell our daughter until January, because the holidays, and just finding the right time and the right words, because that was what was holding me there. It was not about second guessing what I wanted, or what I deserved. It was, how do I ruin my daughter's life, but when I choose to fix mine? And that is a guilt that is still hanging around.
It kills. I totally understand. And knowing that, how long did you wait because of that guilt to have that conversation
Yeah,
with
we
your
got
ex?
to Thanksgiving with my ex. Too long.
Yeah, right? Because in the back of your mind, were you just, talk to me about how you were feeling once you realized it and you were like, okay, something needs to happen. We need to move forward in a different direction, but we have our daughter and, I'm feeling guilt about that. I'm feeling all these things about that. Like, How was that for you? Were you like sitting at the dinner table saying, I really want to say something, but I'm scared to, kind of thing?
See, here's the thing. No, because we really didn't interact. And so there wasn't like opportunity. And so it was going to take a lot of like, okay, I need to go out of my normal routine to go 3 flights downstairs to have this conversation. But it was also, I started really noticing it in my drinking, because when we would drink together, which is the only thing that used to connect us, is when my anger really came out, and I just was not nice because I was holding all of this stuff in that I needed to be saying.
Yeah.
And so ultimately it was just very easy to not think about it, because to be honest, I could have continued living that way forever. I would not have been my happiest self, and my daughter would have never seen my happiest self. But for her sacrifice, I believe I could have kept going. We just would have been arguing in secret, and you know what I mean? And so I don't even think I really thought about it that much. But what came down to it was I did commit to being sober 100%. And then we went on a family vacation back to New England, and my best friend is engaged to his best friend. And so when we go visit, he has a friend and I have a friend. We were on that vacation for about a week, and we did not spend any time together. We did not sleep in the same room. And then when we came back, our therapist told us that he was leaving and said, yeah, would you like to get a new therapist? And my partner said no. And I knew in that moment that we had weeks left. And it literally, we came back from our vacation November 1st, and I'm pretty sure we agreed to separate like that next weekend. So, once that light bulb went off and that alignment happened, it was like,
Yeah. So you mentioned that you didn't really connect very much. You didn't have a lot of opportunity to have conversations. Was it a conversation? Was it something like, hey, meet me at the table at 12 and let's chat this out? Like, how did that go?
alcohol was involved, not on my part. Lies were spread about me. And ultimately, it gave him the courage to ask me questions and bring it up. And so it was a conversation after dinner in the basement. And, he just stated the lies that were told to him and that he believed. And I knew in that moment, if this person can't trust me after 8 years, there's no point. There's no point.
Yeah.
And so he ultimately said he wasn't happy, and I said I wasn't happy, and he said we should separate, and I said I 1,000% agree, and that was kind of that. We had a couple conversations after, but it was more of like navigating our next steps. It wasn't really anything other than that.
Was there time then or before where you were like, look, saying to yourself, I gave it my very best shot, and did you confidently feel like you had done so?
At that point, yeah, I had told a lot of I have people in my life that have been telling me to make this choice for a long time. And I knew in my heart for my daughter, I had been married before with no children involved. We were together for 4 years, married for a year. And I knew that this time I just had to know that I gave every little piece of me for her sake. And her father and I had that discussion multiple times while in therapy, like, are we willing to keep going? Are we willing to keep trying? And that's what therapy was, and towards the end of it, we were like, are we willing to keep going? Are we willing to keep trying? And it started to realize that I don't even think we were capable of providing. And when we both kind of realized that, then we were kind of existing. And then we were, it was just kind of, again, like we were just kind of like, when do we rip off this Band-Aid? When do we who's going to call it first? Who's going to be the bad guy? And all of that. And I just think that I bless the people who decided to spread lies around me because, it gave the courage to have that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me about the emotions, and I'm sure there are several, and it was probably a bit of a flood if it's anything like mine. But once that conversation was had and the Band-Aid was off, what then? What were you like internally then?
Relieved.
Really? That's the biggest feeling?
I felt like 1,000 pounds had been ripped off my shoulders.
Oh, girl.
And we had a conversation a couple weeks later about how well we were getting along. And we talked about how it was easier we had to live in the house for 5 months after we decided to separate. With 3 of 4 of those months, our daughter didn't even know.
Mm.
And so the good thing about that is we didn't really function life together anyways. So she really couldn't tell the difference outside of, he just wasn't sleeping in the room anymore. But I also started working overnights. So she slept with me. And so she knew if she slept with me that dad didn't like to move her. So it really wasn't obvious to her, which is good. But we talked about how there's no expectation for either of us to spend time together or show affection, because that was a huge argument often, was affection and the fact that I didn't show it. There was no more resentment because we weren't having these expectations of each other. We were just living life together. And because of not having the expectation of being a married couple and being together, we got along so much more. Much more. So I think there was a huge relief for both of us. And I mean, fast forward, I am so hopeful to be able to fall in love with him as a human again. Yeah. And as my friend, because when we don't have that heaviness, we really are friends.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. Let's talk more about the feelings. Let's talk about fear. Did fear come into play? Because I know with me, I didn't have children. I was married prior to my current husband, and we didn't have kids, kind of like you said. Mm-hmm. And my big fear was, because I kind of went from my parents' house and then to college, and then it wasn't too long after that I had connected with this man. I was 19 when we connected, so not very old, not a lot of life experience, not a lot of experience being out on my own. So for the first time, 3,000 miles away from where I grew up, I was about to be completely on my own, and I had a lot of fear about that. Did you share in any of that?
Yeah, at the beginning I did. To be honest, my biggest fear was just separating our household. We had to rehome a dog. Oh. Which is like, I don't know when I'm going to heal from that. Yeah, that is like tough. And just my business had just crumbled. I mean, I was literally bringing in $100 to maybe a couple $100 a month, and so I ultimately, had to go back to a part-time job overnighting because I homeschool. And so there was fear in like, how is this even going to be possible? Mm-hmm. We 100% knew that we could not stay in Colorado. So I know that there was fear on both ends of like, where are we going to end up? Mm-hmm. But I always 100% knew that if we separated, that I would go back home to New England for a period of time. And that's what I did. Mm-hmm. So there was fear of income and financial stability. But we didn't have that together either. So part of me was like, a lot of the things that I had fear in, I was already existing in. So when I thought about it, if I'm going to already be stressed about A, B, and C, why don't I go be stressed about them by myself? Yeah. Then here, because now I'm not expecting to lean on someone to help me with this. Like, mm-hmm. I've always been able to count on myself since I was 14 years old. And so it almost makes it easier to do that. But and then the fear of just breaking my daughter's heart.
Yeah.
I mean, we have good days most of the time, but there's hard moments, and those moments are hard. And there was always that fear of that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that that was probably your biggest fear, because once you, according to your story, once you had that conversation with your ex, she wasn't aware for quite some time. How did you decide to, and how did you, yeah, how did you decide, and like where, when, and all that, to sit her down? Was it the two of you? Was it just you?
Yeah. So, um, unfortunately, I believe that comments were made beforehand, according to her. And so it got to a point where we got through Thanksgiving, we got through Christmas, and after Christmas, I was losing sleep. I was like, I can't keep this from her anymore. Uh, I need to tell her. We need to do it together. We need to make sure. I also wanted to make sure that our emotions were worked through, so that when we sat down with her, they weren't coming out. And so
Yeah.
that we could be level headed. And so I had a lot of conversation with her dad around that. Is we need to be a united front. We need to do this together. We cannot be making comments around her. She can, we need to be aware of when these conversations are happening. My daughter is very intuitive and very connected and very aware of conversations. She likes to listen and be a part of it all. So I think it was like the second week of just January maybe, but at that point I was not sleeping. I mean, I was up all night, perseverating, overthinking, dreaming, nightmaring about this conversation. And I don't really remember like what happened before it, but we took her upstairs and we all laid in our bed. And she took it well. And we just told her, like, Mommy and Daddy have decided to make some changes to our family. And I think that we just said something like, we're better for each other. We want to be better for each other. And if we're better for each other, we're going to be better for you. And that looks like being friends. That looks like not being husband and wife anymore. And she kind of was like sitting there, and then we were like, and then she kind of like, I think then a light bulb went off a little bit, because then she started crying. But we just said there's going to be some big changes coming, but not right away. And we're always going to be a family, and we're always going to love each other, and we love you, and it's no one's fault. We just really want to be better, and we just kept saying things like that.
And well, I mean, she's a pretty smart girl, and like you said, she picks up on things. So
yeah, and we did say we're gonna go on a long vacation. Me and you are gonna go on a long vacation to Grandpa's. We're gonna get to see Grandma Chrissy on the way, and we're just gonna spend the summer with family and friends. And then we're gonna go back to Arizona, and we're gonna figure it out. But we're just gonna go on a long vacation, and so she got excited about that. And
yeah, that sounds fun. And she got to see her grandparents, so that's cool.
Yeah. And, ultimately her birthday was shortly after we got there. So her dad flew out for a week and came. So, I think that for who she is, she took it really, really well. And like I said, it's mostly good, but there's hard moments, which is expected.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also new.
Yeah.
You had mentioned one of the difficult parts. I mean, I understand there's a lot of moving parts that are difficult, but one of the difficult parts was splitting up your household. Can you talk just a little bit more about that and give me a little more insight on that?
Well, one is we were in a 2-year lease.
Oh.
And we were only hitting 1 year. So we had to come up with the finances to break that lease, which is a huge reason why we had to stay as long as we did, because we had to wait for a tax return. We had 3 dogs, which I could only take one and he could only take one. And unfortunately, our bully that we rescued, we tried to navigate keeping her as best we could and ultimately had to rehome her. My ex will tell ya he needs to figure it out, but all the trucks are in my name, all the cell phones are in my name, all of the things are in my name. You'll never hear this, love you, Julian, but he doesn't even know he had to ask for help to check my email. Like, so there was just like technical stuff that I was like, okay, how do we navigate this? And, it started to get, there was, ultimately we were okay, but there was hard days. And with drinking and other people that time was spent with, there was just days where we were ready to be moved on to the next step, and we knew we couldn't be. Like, we knew we were stuck in this house until April. And it really started to get difficult at the end. So yeah, I mean, I heard a podcast once that literally said people stay together because they don't want to separate their finances and all of the stuff that is together.
Yeah, because it's a lot, right? And, you guys were together for 8 years with one child. I imagine my poor mamas out there that are going through this after 20 years with 4 kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's very overwhelming. Even for my situation, we owned a house, we had a couple of vehicles, we had dogs too, and we had to figure all of that out. And this was at a time in my life where I was not anywhere near the level of emotional intelligence that I am now. And so that didn't go well for me. That was a lot of, spicy emotions, a lot of verbal jabs on both parts. How did you, if you were able to avoid that, how did you avoid that?
I am very grateful for the healing that I have done. And I have never arrived, and I never will arrive. We always have moments to grow. But I have been working on responding and not reacting for a very long time. And I would say towards the, beginning of all this, there was definitely words said, and but most of the time I ignore it. A lot of the times it was he was out and texting me. And so it was very easy to just shut my phone off and focus on Callie. I also had a very beautiful community growing in Colorado. I started going to something called Earth Circle. And so Sundays I spent completely to myself, just pouring into myself. And I was doing 75 hard during all of this.
Oh my.
And so, to be honest, I'm so thankful that I was doing that during this, because it kept me focused on what I was trying to create rather than getting lost in all the emotion. I got up every single day and did my 2 workouts. I read my self-development every single day. I was eating while I was sleeping. I was so thankful that I was doing that challenge during this, because I was able to stay focused on that, and it almost deflected getting lost in it all.
That's amazing. That's great advice. So what I heard is if you're going through something challenging like this, it could be beneficial to find something to focus on that benefits you, that you're passionate about, to keep you on track.
Yeah, I mean, I was 100% in the lane of growing and pouring into me. And I know that's a huge reason why the separation happened, but
Yeah.
I could not let the emotional roller coaster of all this deter me, or else the whole thing was pointless anyways, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's gear change for a hot minute and talk about the business side of things. Now, you had mentioned, so back when we talked before, I think we did actually talk about your business. It was intertwined in there a bit, because we were discussing, I think, wellness and that kind of thing, if I remember right. And so your business lined up very well with that. So obviously, going through a bunch of change as you have, that's going to affect things. So what did you decide, being in that lane of 100% growth and being where your mindset was, what did you decide were going to be the steps that you're going to take to get your business to where you want it to be in your new space?
It's not where I want it to be. But no, so I was affiliated with network marketing for 4 years. And so ultimately that, I mean, over the last year, it just crashed, right? Because that's a dependent business on people and certain structures, right? And so I knew that it was coming because it was
Coming.
decreasing.
Yeah.
As it was coming. I had lots of conversations with my mentor about what's next. And I also am a kids yoga and mindfulness teacher. And I really was starting to love the minds. I loved the mindset piece of what I did and what I've learned. And so I started to think about, okay, this partnership is not bringing in the income that I need, especially becoming a single parent. This is not going to work. I ultimately did go work for overnights for Walmart part-time just to create some sort of safety and stability in my brain. But I knew that partnership was not going to be the case. And it just is not anymore. So ultimately, I knew that I wanted to start melding the worlds, because the mindset piece and changing the way I see things and changing the way I think is what changed me and changed my whole life. And I was so tired of people wanting to have another Band-Aid to lose weight.
Yeah.
And ultimately, even though that's not what I wanted to be doing, that's what people were coming to me for.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I had to rebrand and I had to relaunch and I had to restructure that so that the people that were coming to me were coming for the things that I wanted to help them with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And so I ultimately started doing these coffee and convo things in January that are free virtual events. And there's a topic or a theme every month. Like this month is being present in our real lives. And I would get off of those buzzing. Like I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. We start with a meditation, we have a conversation, we have a little prompt and activity, and then we reflect. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And so the gears were just turning. And so now ultimately I'm coaching as a service, but I'm doing a lot of workshop structure. And so and now that I'm in Arizona, I'm going to start
I
teaching kids
know.
too. But
I'm so excited.
I'm going to be an ESA vendor. I teach kids one-on-one with special needs. So like all of that is in the works, but this workshop piece, like it just spoke to my heart. And so now I really am like restarting everything after 4 years. But I have my first virtual workshop in September, and it's all about self-love and prioritizing ourselves. And, I'm hoping to help people one-on-one after that too, and do some live stuff because I have some amazing friends who own amazing yoga studios here. And I'm excited to just focus on the mindset piece of it, and help people get into a growth mindset and really be ready to transform themselves as a whole. If there's a goal of weight loss, cool, I'll give you some tips. But I want to fuel up here. Well,
The amount of energy that comes off of you when you talk about it is pretty mind-blowing. As you're talking about that, again, with the chills, I'm getting them all up and down my body. This is what you were meant to do. And I mean, you don't need me to tell you that.
Yeah,
But
and actually, I've shared this. Do you know the Phoenix, the sober community?
No.
Okay. Oh, girl. Okay.
What?
So the Phoenix is a sober community. It's a nonprofit. It's all over the country. There is an app you download. There is events all over Arizona. There's events virtual. And I became a volunteer and I started doing these Mindset Matters Rise and Grind events in Colorado. And it was basically the same thing. We would have a topic like getting healthy community, setting goals, and we would sit and we would would direct those. And that's kind of where again, just flourished. But the Phoenix has been such an uplifting community for me because it's just people who are focused on wellness and growth. And yeah, so if you're trying to live a sober life, download the Phoenix.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really great to know. And for those of you out there that aren't aware, we do have a Mom Nation sober group. It's a small group at this time, but I kind of like how small and, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's easy to get to know others. There's
Intimate.
there's a word for that. It's
Yeah.
just not coming to me at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And I love that so much. And thank you for sharing that. If somebody if any of our audience members want to get in touch, if they want to be a part of your Coffee and Conversations event, which sounds awesome. You said that's once a month?
Yeah. So it's the last Thursday of every month. Arizona time, it's 6:30 to 7:30 a.m. Zoom link is 480-650-2310. No, I have a link tree. It's whatever the link tree app is.
Yeah, I got it. I got it in the show notes here for you.
Yes, Linktree/Grateful Being HW, I believe. I should write those things down before I come on here.
I know you don't click on yourself very often, huh?
Yeah, that has like my social media, my personal. I probably am gonna update it with a couple other things, but message me on Facebook. I use my personal Facebook really for everything.
Yeah.
I do have a business Facebook, but that's again being revamped. So it's kind of like
personal Facebook's the place to get you now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Instagram, that kind of thing,
Fantastic. I thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here. And for those of you who don't know, Krystal and I have known each other for a few years, and I was not privy, because we just haven't had an opportunity to talk for whatever reason. I was not privy to the happenings over the last 8 months. So when we hopped on, I said, don't tell me. Tell me when we're on the show. And so I really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate your being so brave and just giving me the update like you probably would have given me regardless of the thousands of people that are watching.
I don't know. You might have got a little more tea. No?
I might have.
Now
I'm going to have to ask again.
Yeah, I do want to say, and I don't know if we're going to have a final thought or anything, but
this is it.
Okay. I do want to say, when it comes down to it for me, so there was a moment, so me and my daughter drove across country, and there was a moment in the car where she was playing, and she was playing with her babies, and the baby was crying, and I heard her call the baby's dad and the things that she said and, what the person was doing. And anyways, that whole moment was a huge realization to what she thought was normal. And I started crying. Luckily, I was driving, so she couldn't see me. The reason that I ultimately knew that I had to make the choice is my daughter deserved to see me choose happiness and choose myself so that she never, ever settles for what she thinks she is worth. Yep. I have done so much work. I picked up a book called Worthy by Jamie Lynn Kern this summer that I did not think was for me. I thought I knew my self-worth. And then I learned that self-worth and self-confidence are totally two different things. And I also thought that I healed my codependency and realized that also was not true. And so making the decision was the hardest thing that I could have ever done. But I wanted to teach my daughter that we can make hard decisions and we can thrive after them. And I have been the most happy person in my entire life. And I'm not even kidding you. I have driven across country twice. I have driven in a van to Oregon and gone to a 3-day music festival only to drive back to Arizona and go to a 3-day yoga retreat. Like, I am choosing myself. And if you have children, they deserve you to do that for you because you're doing it for them ultimately. I made the decisions I did before that because of the way that my childhood was and the way that my mother made her choices. And I love her, and she knows that.
She does.
So, I encourage everyone to sit down with themselves and say, is this the life that is for me? And if anything goes off inside that feels uncomfortable, it's probably not.
Yeah.
And you deserve to change it, but only you can make the choice. And, I heard, and this is like one of my favorite quotes, if you're not changing it, you're choosing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what got me through the last, 2 years of the marriage was I actively knew that I was choosing it for a reason. And until I wanted to change it, I was going to choose it every day.
Yeah. That is so giant and so profound. And I think a lot of times we don't necessarily realize, like you had said earlier in the show, my daughter watches everything. She listens to everything. Like she's picking up on everything. And I don't think that we give our kiddos enough credit a lot of times because they are learning from us, right? There are things that I still do to this day. And I'll say it kind of like what happened with you and I before we got on the show when you laughed and I'm like, oh my God, you just sounded like your mom. Like I will do things and I'm like, was that me or was that Marilyn? Like, I'm pretty sure that was not me, And so they're so deeply ingrained in us, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I 100% am on that page with you. I am riding in that lane with you, girlfriend. They are watching us, and it is our duty to show them how to serve themselves. And that's not selfish, serving yourself, right? We were taught that maybe when we were kids. A lot of us were. But it's a big giant lie.
It's funny because it's like the thing that I know, but it's also the thing that is like keeping my guilt. It's so weird, but here we are, human beings with all these freaking conscious and subconscious thoughts. And I'm over here trying to figure it out while also helping this growing human figure hers out. And it's like,
yeah, that belief system, that pattern of thought that we hold over and over and over and over is a really powerful thing, isn't it?
Our thought is the most powerful thing. What we think is true is true.
Yeah, 100%.
So you think it is your truth.
We have a lot more to talk about, not today.
Have actual coffee. We talk when we're on here, but I like to actually see you in person, in private,
Yes, please. Yes, please. So what I'm going to do as soon as we get off is I'm going to message you so that we can do that and we can connect and I can give you a big giant hug because I miss you and I'm so excited that you're here like in the flesh.
Forever.
Forever.
I don't know about that.
All right, everybody. Thank you again, Krystal. I always love having you. As you guys can see, we can sit here and BS for quite some time, and we are going to do that because we are going to grab that coffee. I will get in touch with you, my friend, as soon as we are off the show. For those of you who want to check out any of our previous episodes, hop on over to our YouTube channel. It is at Mom Nation USA. That's our handle. Scroll down just a bit, and the very first playlist you're going to see is the From the Heart playlist. That's what this episode that's the home of this episode, I should say. There are plenty of other playlists on there. I hope you enjoy it. If you prefer the podcast style, maybe you run a lot, hike a lot, bike a lot, moving your body, right, Krystal? That's important. Then hop on over to your favorite podcast platform and do a quick search for Mom Nation Talk Radio. There you will find us and all of our shows, all of our episodes. Do your thing, people. Follow, like, notify, download, all of those things. We appreciate you, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Hi.